The sun rose over the desert world of Tarn-9, casting a harsh light across endless dunes. The wind howled, carrying grit and sand that stung the skin of anyone brave enough to walk across it. Among the dunes, humans moved carefully, their eyes scanning every ridge and shadow. They were survivors, the last remnants of a colony that had crash-landed on this hostile planet decades ago. Captain Elias Ward, a man whose muscles were hardened by years of training and survival, stood atop a small ridge watching the horizon. His dark hair whipped in the wind and his eyes were sharp, alert. The humans had learned to live with the Draken, the dominant alien species of Tarn-9. The Draken were tall, reptilian warriors with green-scaled skin and eyes like molten gold. They were strong, proud, and cruel, believing in strength above all else. For decades, they had ruled the humans as slaves, calling them soft creatures blown by the wind. Elias did not speak aloud. Words were dangerous here. A careless sound could carry for miles across the dunes, and the Draken were always listening. Instead, he signaled to a small group behind him. They were the Resistance, humans who had refused to bow to their captors. They were armed with crude weapons crafted from the wreckage of their old ships, sharpened metal and scavenged alien tech. "Storm coming," whispered Mara, a young woman who had grown up on Tarn-9 and knew its moods better than anyone. She pointed to the east, where dark clouds were rising over the horizon. The humans exchanged tense looks. The wind on Tarn-9 was more than weather, it was a weapon. Sandstorms could swallow men whole, burying them under tons of shifting dunes. Elias nodded. "Good," he said. "It will cover our movements." They began to move, careful not to make noise. Their plan was simple but risky. They would strike a Draken patrol that had been harassing human settlements near the northern dunes. If they succeeded, it would send a message: humans could fight back. The dunes stretched endlessly, a sea of orange and gold. The wind carried a dry, metallic scent, a warning that Tarn-9 was never kind to the weak. As they approached the patrol's last known position, Elias's mind raced. Every human on this world knew that the Draken were unpredictable. Their warriors fought with sharp claws and plasma spears, weapons that could pierce even the strongest armor. But humans had learned to adapt. They had learned to use their intelligence, their creativity, and most of all, the wind itself as a shield. Suddenly, Mara froze. She held up her hand. "They're close," she said. Elias crouched, peering over the ridge. A group of Draken warriors moved across the sand below, unaware of the humans above. Their scales glistened in the sun and their eyes were alert, scanning for signs of human activity. One of them carried a flag with the symbol of Wrathkor the Iron Fang, the Draken chief who ruled this region. Elias counted them. 8 warriors. 8 strong Draken against 10 humans. Not impossible, but dangerous. "Remember," Elias whispered, "we strike fast, use the storm, then disappear. No heroics." The humans descended silently. They had learned to move like shadows in the wind, blending with the dunes and the swirling sand. As they approached, Elias signaled Mara and 2 others to flank the Draken from the left while he and 3 more approached from the right. 2 stayed behind to keep watch over the rear, making sure no other Draken appeared unexpectedly. The wind picked up, a low howl rising across the dunes. Sand whipped around the humans, stinging their faces, but it hid their movements perfectly. As they got close, they saw the Draken pause, listening to the wind. They were uneasy. Even the strongest warriors feared the storms of Tarn-9. Elias raised his hand. 3, 2, 1. The attack was swift. Mara and her team struck first, using small shock grenades scavenged from the wreckage of old human ships. The explosions were muffled by the storm, throwing 2 Draken off balance. Elias and his team charged from the right, spears in hand, striking at weak points in the Draken armor. The battle was chaotic, a blur of claws, metal, and sand. Humans were faster than the Draken expected. They fought with precision, targeting joints and unarmored areas. One Draken warrior swung a massive claw aiming for Elias, but he rolled under the blow, slicing at the Draken's leg. The creature roared, stumbling as another human struck its flank. Within moments, the patrol was defeated. The Draken were not used to humans fighting together so skillfully. Some fled into the dunes, others lay motionless in the sand. Elias stood over the fallen chief of the patrol, breathing heavily. His uniform was torn and his face was covered in dust and sweat, but his eyes shone with triumph. Leave them, he said, to no one in particular. We don't need prisoners. They will carry the story back, Mara nodded. It will spread. They will know humans can fight. Elias looked at the horizon where the storm clouds now formed a dark wall. The wind is on our side, he said softly. It always has been. As they retreated to their hidden camp, the humans shared quiet words of encouragement. Each small victory mattered. Each patrol defeated was a step toward freedom. For decades, humans had been slaves, but now, under the storm's cover, they were hunters. Back in the Draken fortress, Rathkor the Iron Fang paced angrily. The news had reached him. A patrol had been wiped out. One lone warrior returned, carrying the patrol's broken spears and speaking only one word: message. Rathkor's golden eyes narrowed. The humans had struck first. They were not weak. They were cunning, resourceful, and dangerous. He slammed his clawed hand against the stone wall. Prepare the fleet, he roared. These humans will learn what it means to challenge the Draken. But even Rathkor could not fully predict what lay ahead. The humans were not just surviving. They were learning. Every day they studied Draken tactics, scavenged technology, and experimented with the storms. They were creating weapons that could channel the wind itself, silent, deadly, and invisible until it was too late. Night fell over Tarn 9, and the storm raged across the dunes. In their camp, Elias gathered his people. We've shown them what we can do, he said. But this is only the beginning. They will come after us harder than ever. We must be ready. We must become stronger, smarter, faster. This world has been theirs for too long. It's time humans make it our own. The humans listened, inspired by their leader's words. They were tired, scarred, and hungry, but in their hearts burned a fierce determination. They were no longer just survivors. They were a resistance. As the night deepened, the wind howled louder, carrying the scent of sand and ozone. Elias stood outside the camp, watching the horizon. Somewhere out there, Draken scouts were moving, searching for any sign of humans. But the humans were not afraid. The wind that once carried only danger now carried hope, secrecy, and strength. Elias whispered to the storm almost as a prayer. Let them come. We are ready. Let the wind remember us. And the wind answered, swirling through the dunes as if in agreement, carrying with it the promise of rebellion, survival, and the beginning of a legend. In the distance, lightning flashed across the desert sky. The humans watched in awe, knowing that soon they would no longer be prey. They would become the storm. The first part of the story ends with the humans huddled in their hidden camp, eyes shining with determination. The Draken may have ruled Tarn 9 for centuries, but change was coming. The winds of Tarn 9 were shifting, and with them the fate of both humans and Draken would be rewritten forever. The wind had never been so loud. It swept across the dunes of Tarn 9, bending the sand into strange shapes and carrying whispers that only the alert could hear. Captain Elias Ward stood on a ridge overlooking the desert, feeling the storm's pulse. The humans in his camp moved carefully behind him, their faces streaked with dust and sweat, but their eyes were alive with purpose. It had been a week since their attack on the Draken patrol, yet the victory still burned in their minds. Rumors of human courage had spread quietly through the Draken camps. Even the smallest acts of resistance seemed to ripple across the desert, stirring fear among the reptilian warriors. Elias lowered his gaze to a narrow canyon where a single figure stumbled forward. It was a human scout, one of the survivors sent to watch Draken movements. In his hands he held something that glinted in the fading light, a broken Draken spear, split clean in two. He approached the camp cautiously, his footsteps nearly swallowed by the wind. When he arrived, he dropped the weapon before Elias. A message, he said, his voice barely audible over the storm. The humans stared at it in silence. The spear was made of storm steel, a rare metal Draken used for only the finest weapons. It was unbreakable by any normal force, and yet here it was, snapped in half. The human scout looked exhausted, but there was pride in his eyes. Elias picked up the spear, turning it over in his hands. The Draken will understand this, he said quietly. They will know that we are no longer weak. Mara stepped forward. Do you think they will come after us harder now? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. They will, Elias replied, setting the spear aside. But that is fine. Let them try. The more they come, the more we learn. The more we learn, the stronger we become. In the distance, the storm seemed to grow, its wind carrying a strange rhythm. The humans felt it, a subtle vibration in the air, almost like a warning. They had learned that Tarn-9 was alive in its own way, that the desert's moods could be as dangerous as any Draken warrior, and now the storm seemed to carry something more, a sense that the humans were about to change the rules of this world forever. A growing threat. Inside the Draken fortress, Hrathkor the Iron Fang roared. The message had reached him. One of his patrols had been destroyed, and the lone survivor had brought back the broken spear. His golden eyes blazed with anger. The humans were no longer just prey. They were cunning, organized, and capable of fighting back. Hrathkor's advisors crowded around him, their scaled faces twisted in fear and anger. "Chief," one said, "they are learning our ways. They watch, they adapt, and they strike when least expected." Hrathkor slammed his clawed hand against the stone table. "Enough. Strength defines all. They cannot match us. Gather the warriors. We will crush them before they can grow any stronger." But even Hrathkor felt a sliver of unease. The humans were unpredictable. Their victories had been small but symbolic. Each one shattered the illusion of Draken supremacy. And the storm? The storm seemed to be on the human side. Humans in the shadows. Back in their camp, Elias gathered the leaders of the resistance. They were engineers, former soldiers, scavengers, and farmers, ordinary humans who had been forced to become extraordinary. "We need to strike while the Draken are unprepared," Elias said. "The spear they left behind is more than a weapon. It is proof that even their strongest cannot withstand us when we fight smart." One of the engineers, a tall man named Kieran, nodded. "We can use the storms. Our windcrafts are ready. If we strike at night, we can move like shadows. They won't see us coming," Elias smiled. "Exactly. We have learned from them. We have adapted, and now we will turn their weapons against them." The humans worked through the evening, checking their scavenged gear and preparing traps. Small devices that could amplify wind gusts were hidden in the sand. Sand pits were carefully camouflaged. Simple, clever mechanisms that could topple Draken skycrafts were set in place. Each human knew their role, each movement practiced until it was second nature. Mara approached Elias as the sun dipped below the horizon. "Do you think we can really win?" she asked, fear and hope mingling in her voice. Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "We don't need to win in one strike. We only need to survive, adapt, and grow stronger. The Draken think they control this world. They are wrong. Tarn-9 belongs to whoever is brave enough to master it, and that is us." The first strike night fell and the storm reached its peak. Lightning flashed across the desert sky, illuminating the dunes in brief blinding bursts. The Draken fortress loomed in the distance, unaware of the humans moving through the storm. Elias led a small strike team. They moved with precision, almost invisible in the swirling sand. The wind masked their footsteps and the storm's roar drowned any sound of their approach. As they neared the outer walls, they encountered Draken scouts. Elias signaled silently. Mara and two others flanked the warriors, striking with short, powerful blades. The Draken fell quickly, surprised by the humans' speed and coordination. Inside the fortress, alarms sounded. The Draken had detected something, but it was too late. Humans appeared on the battlements, using windcrafts to move across the walls. Small devices they had placed earlier released gusts of sand and debris, blinding the Draken defenders. Elias moved through the chaos with a calm focus. Every strike was precise, every movement calculated. The humans were no longer running. They were hunting. The Draken were strong, but their strength was predictable. Humans had learned to anticipate, to adapt, to turn every attack into an opportunity. By dawn, the fortress gates were breached. The Draken inside were terrified, seeing humans move through the storm as if they were spirits of the desert itself. Some fought bravely, but many fled unaccustomed to such cunning. The Draken react when Hrathkor learned of the attack. His anger was unmatched. "This is not a challenge. This is an insult," he bellowed. "We will respond with fire and blood. Gather the fleet. Send word to the Empire. These humans will be crushed." But Hrathkor's fear was growing. The humans were no longer predictable. They moved like the wind, striking and vanishing before the Draken could counter. And the spear. The broken spear had become a symbol, a warning that humans were changing the balance of power on Tarn-9. Elsewhere in the desert, other human groups began to rise. Inspired by the news of the strike, small bands of settlers who had hidden from the Draken for decades emerged from their camps. For the first time, the humans were not isolated survivors. They were part of something larger, a resistance that could not be ignored. A whisper of hope. Elias returned to the ridge overlooking the dunes. The storm had passed, leaving the desert eerily quiet. He watched the Draken forces regroup, preparing for retaliation. Yet despite the danger, he felt hope. The humans had struck the first true blow. They had survived. They had adapted. They had sent a message that would echo across Tarn 9. Mara joined him, looking out at the horizon. "Do you think they will come after us harder now?" she asked. "They will," Elias admitted. "But that is exactly what we want. Every attack, every attempt to crush us makes us stronger. Every Draken they send, every strategy they use is something we will learn from. This world has been theirs for too long. Now we are the storm they cannot control." The humans gathered around the ridge, tired but determined. Fires flickered in the small encampment, and the smell of roasted rations mixed with the ozone of the storm. Children peeked out from hidden shelters, seeing their elders moving with purpose, knowing that for the first time, they were not powerless. As night fell again, the wind carried a strange sound, almost like a whisper. It was not a threat, not yet. It was a call, a reminder that survival was not just about hiding, not just about fighting. It was about adaptation, intelligence, and courage. Elias raised his voice so the humans could hear over the wind. "Tomorrow we continue. We grow, we learn, and one day Tarn 9 will remember us not as prey but as its masters. The Draken will know humans are not soft. We endure, we adapt, we survive." The humans cheered quietly, knowing that each day was a small victory, each victory a step toward freedom. They huddled against the cold desert night, listening to the wind, letting it carry their determination across the dunes. Somewhere beyond the horizon, Draken scouts moved, unaware that their prey had become predators in disguise. The broken spear had been only the first warning, and Tarn 9 itself seemed to side with the humans. The storm whispered across the desert, carrying with it the story of a people who refused to bow, who refused to be broken, and who were learning to master a world that had once crushed them. And so, under the storm-lit sky, the humans of Tarn 9 prepared for what would come next, stronger, smarter, and ready to turn every wind into an ally. The desert of Tarn 9 roared under the fury of the storm. Lightning cracked across the sky, revealing jagged dunes and the silhouettes of humans moving through the chaos. Captain Elias Ward stood atop a ridge, watching the horizon with a careful eye. Since the first strikes, the Draken had regrouped. They were angry, desperate, and stronger than before. Reinforcements had arrived from the Draken Empire, sleek skyships bristling with plasma weapons, their hulls shining coldly under the storm-lit sky. But Elias and his people were ready. They had prepared for this moment, turning the very storms of Tarn 9 into their allies. Mara ran to his side, her face streaked with sweat and sand. "They're coming," she shouted over the wind. Elias nodded. "Good. Let them see the wind remember its own. Today we do not hide. Today we strike." The humans spread across the ridge, forming lines of attack that were hard to see in the blowing sand. Small devices they had planted days before released gusts of wind and sand, creating illusions of movement, hiding their true positions. The Draken scouts, confused and blinded, could not tell friend from foe. From above, the Draken fleet descended, plasma cannons glowing and ready. Rathkor's voice echoed across the dunes through a strange translator device. "Humans, you have made your choice. Surrender or die." Elias raised his hand, signaling the attack. "No surrender," he whispered. "Only victory." The first wave the Draken landed in force. Their warriors stormed the dunes with heavy weapons and sharp claws, expecting to crush the humans quickly. But the humans had learned the desert's secrets. Traps triggered beneath the feet of the first Draken wave, causing massive blasts of sand that threw them off balance. Kieran, the engineer, directed small teams with precision. "Flank left. Use the wind gusters." His voice was calm but commanding, and every human responded without hesitation. Windcrafts, small gliding machines built from scavenged wreckage, soared through the storm. From their seats, humans released nets and small shock devices onto the Draken warriors below. The alien warriors roared in frustration as they found themselves trapped, stunned, and pushed by forces they could not see. Elias moved among his people like a shadow. He did not fight recklessly. He chose his battles carefully, striking at leaders and key fighters. Every Draken warrior he faced underestimated him. Each time they lunged, he ducked, sidestepped, and countered with precision. Lightning flashed, illuminating the battlefield. The Draken skyships fired plasma beams, but humans had dug pits and trenches, hiding from their shots. The storm carried away most of the heat and light, making the fleet's attack less effective. For every wave of Draken that fell, humans moved in unseen, counter-attacking from unexpected angles. A rising legend, some Draken tried to retreat, but the humans pursued relentlessly. Every strike was calculated, and every maneuver used the wind as a weapon. They were no longer simply survivors. They were hunters, becoming one with the storm that had once threatened them. Word of the humans' attack spread quickly among the Draken settlements. Tales of humans moving unseen, striking with deadly precision and vanishing before the Draken could respond began to circulate. Hrathkor's soldiers whispered in fear. Even the strongest warriors began to doubt the old belief that strength alone defined victory. Inside the Draken fortress, Hrathkor paced in frustration. "This is impossible," he roared. "How can they fight so boldly? They are only humans. They should be weak, scared, begging for mercy." One of his lieutenants, a tall Draken named Varkthar, spoke cautiously. "Chief, perhaps they are learning faster than we expected. Perhaps they have adapted to the storms, to our weapons, even to us." Hrathkor slammed his claw against the stone floor. "Learning does not matter. Strength decides everything." But even Hrathkor could feel doubt creeping into his mind. The humans had survived strikes that would have crushed any other species. They had taken Draken weapons and turned them against their masters. They had mastered the desert storms. The turning point. Elias knew the key to victory was not brute force but strategy. The Draken fleet was powerful, but it was predictable. He ordered his teams to spread out, creating multiple points of attack. Some humans acted as decoys, drawing Draken warriors into traps. Others used windcrafts to target the fleet's engines, small devices causing malfunctions in the plasma systems. Lightning struck the desert again, momentarily blinding the Draken. Elias seized the opportunity, signaling a concentrated attack. Mara and her team led a strike into the heart of the Draken formation. With precision and coordination, they sabotaged the skyships, sending two crashing into the dunes below. Hrathkor's roar of anger echoed across the battlefield. "Destroy them all. Leave no human standing." But the humans were relentless. Each Draken counterattack was met with a clever trap, a diversion, or a sudden strike. They fought as one, their movements almost choreographed, each human knowing the other's positions without speaking a word. The Draken's mistake. Hrathkor grew frustrated and ordered his warriors to focus on Elias. "Kill him," he demanded. "If he falls, the humans will scatter." Elias saw the trap forming and smiled faintly. "They want to fight me?" he whispered. "Fine. Let them see the storm itself fight with us." He moved quickly, leading the Draken warriors into a narrow canyon where the wind had become violent and unpredictable. Sand whipped into their faces, cutting at their scales and blinding them. The canyon's shape amplified the storm, and the Draken, used to open battles of strength, struggled in the confined, chaotic space. Humans struck from above and below. Rocks and debris carried by the wind pelted the Draken relentlessly. Traps set days before activated, toppling walls of sand onto advancing warriors. Hrathkor's best fighters fell one by one, unable to adapt to the storm's fury and the humans' cunning. A message carried by the wind as the battle raged. Elias spotted a Draken lieutenant attempting to retreat with a communicator. Mara and two others intercepted him, retrieving the device. In it, they heard Hrathkor's orders. "Send word to the Empire. The humans are not to be underestimated. They strike with the storm itself. They are dangerous." The humans exchanged glances, pride shining in their eyes. They had not only survived, they had proven themselves. The Draken, who had ruled Tarn 9 for centuries, now feared the humans. Elias held the communicator and spoke softly, almost to himself. "The wind carries our name now. Let them remember it." The aftermath. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving a battlefield strewn with sand, debris, and the fallen Draken. Humans moved carefully, tending to the wounded and recovering what they could from the wreckage. Their victory was not total. The Draken still had forces in the distance, but the tide had shifted. Small groups of humans who had hidden across the desert now began emerging, inspired by the victories. The resistance was no longer confined to Elias's camp. It was spreading across Tarn 9. For the first time in centuries, the humans were not hunted. They were feared. Elias gathered his people on a high ridge overlooking the battlefield. "Today we have shown them what humans can do," he said. "They may return with more soldiers, more weapons, but we will be ready. Every storm, every wind, every challenge, we will turn it into our strength. Tarn 9 is not theirs by birth. It is ours if we have the courage to claim it." Mara stood beside him, her eyes shining. "Do you think they will come back?" she asked. "They will," Elias replied. "But so will we. And next time, the storm will fight even harder with us." The humans set up temporary camps along the ridge, using the natural formations of the dunes for cover. They worked quickly, repairing windcrafts, checking traps, and sharing stories of bravery. Each tale, each act of courage strengthened their unity. A new legend. Begins far across the desert, Draken warships began moving again, calling reinforcements from orbit. But the humans no longer feared them. They had seen the power they could wield when using intelligence, courage, and the environment itself. The broken spear, once a symbol of Draken's strength, had become a message, a symbol of human resilience. It had been the first warning, and the storm had carried it far. Now humans on Tarn 9 were no longer whispers in the wind. They were a rising force, a legend in the making. As night fell again, Elias looked out over the dunes, the sky painted with stars and streaked with the glow of distant lightning. The storm had passed, but its spirit remained. Humans listened to the wind, feeling its power, and knew that it would always guide them. Elias whispered almost to himself, "We are no longer prey. We are the storm, and Tarn 9 will remember our name." The humans of Tarn 9 slept that night under the watch of the stars, ready to face the next challenge. The Draken may return in force, but humans had learned a truth that could not be undone. Courage, intelligence, and determination were stronger than brute force alone, and so the legend grew, carried on the wind, whispered among the dunes. The humans of Tarn 9 were no longer weak. They were unstoppable. The desert of Tarn 9 burned under the rising sun, though the storm still lingered, whispering across the dunes. Captain Elias Ward stood atop a ridge, surveying the land. The Draken forces had regrouped after the last battle, but their confidence was shaken. They had underestimated humans, and the humans had shown them that cunning, unity, and adaptation could match brute strength. Elias's eyes scanned the horizon, where Draken skyships appeared like dark specks against the bright sky. The storm had passed, leaving the air tense and heavy, but the humans were ready. Every tribe, every settlement, every hidden group of survivors had gathered, forming a united force that stretched across miles of dunes. Mara stood beside him, her dark hair streaked with sand and sweat. "They are more numerous this time," she said, her voice tense. Elias nodded. "Yes, but we are stronger. We know the desert. We know the storms. And we fight as one. Today, Tarn 9 changes forever." The Draken Strike Wrathcore, the Iron Fang, roared his orders across the dunes. "Crush them! Leave none standing! Show them the power of the Draken Empire." Skyships descended in precision formation, plasma cannons glowing. Draken warriors ran across the sands, claws and weapons raised, ready for total destruction. This was the full might of the Draken Empire, coming down to wipe out the human resistance. But the humans did not panic. They had prepared for this day. Windcrafts soared above the dunes, blending with the gusts of sand. Trenches, traps, and hidden devices awaited the Draken, ready to turn the desert into a weapon. Elias raised his hand, signaling the humans. "Strike together. We are the storm." The battle begins. The first wave of Draken warriors charged. The humans met them with traps and wind-borne devices. Sand and debris whipped across the battlefield, blinding and slowing the Draken. The humans struck with precision, targeting joints, weak points in armor, and exposed weapons. Kieran and his team directed the windcrafts to disable Draken skyships. Small devices planted days ago triggered massive gusts that toppled ships and sent them crashing into dunes. Plasma cannons misfired in the turbulence, and the Draken fleet began to falter under the unexpected assault. Elias moved among his people, calm and focused. Each step was deliberate, each strike precise. He did not fight for glory, he fought for survival and freedom. The humans were no longer prey. They were predators, moving as one with the desert and the storm. Mara led a flanking strike, taking out a group of Draken warriors attempting to encircle the humans. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the battlefield in stark white. For a moment, humans and Draken seemed suspended in time, locked in the struggle for dominance. The turning tide. Despite their numbers, the Draken began to hesitate. Their warriors were strong, but they were unprepared for humans using intelligence and the environment as weapons. Every trap, every strike, every gust of wind seemed to come from nowhere, striking them where they were weakest. Elias saw an opening. Rathakor himself was directing his forces from the central dune, his massive form unmistakable. "If we take him down, the Draken will scatter," Elias whispered to Mara. The humans moved with silence and precision. Winecrafts carried small teams close to Rathakor, unseen by the larger force. Devices planted earlier destabilized the sand beneath his feet, causing the ground to shift violently. Rathakor stumbled, roaring in frustration and disbelief. Elias seized the moment. He ran through the sand, dodging plasma fire and claws until he faced Rathakor directly. The Draken chief towered over him, a massive figure of strength and pride, but his eyes betrayed surprise. "You cannot stop us, human," Rathakor hissed, swinging a massive claw. Elias ducked, rolling to the side. "We don't need to stop you," he replied. "We need to survive, and we fight smarter." The duel began. Rathakor struck with power, each blow capable of killing a normal human instantly, but Elias moved with speed and precision, striking at weak points, dodging and using the terrain to his advantage. Sand whipped around them like a curtain, shielding Elias from some of Rathakor's attacks and giving him openings for counterstrikes. Humans become the storm. Meanwhile, across the battlefield, humans pressed their advantage. Groups that had hidden in the dunes struck the Draken flanks. Windcrafts, moving like shadows, dropped nets and small explosive devices onto Draken formations. Trenches collapsed under gusts of wind, swallowing attackers in sudden avalanches of sand. Draken warriors panicked as they realized they could not predict human movements. The humans were everywhere and nowhere at once, appearing like ghosts in the storm. Each strike, each maneuver reinforced a single truth. The humans of Tarn-9 were no longer weak. They had become the storm itself. Rathakor, enraged and desperate, tried to retreat to the skyships. But the humans had anticipated this. Kieran's team had sabotaged the ship's engines, causing sparks and small explosions as plasma cannons misfired. The Draken fleet began to retreat, but not before suffering heavy losses. The final confrontation, Elias faced Rathakor one last time. The desert around them was torn by wind, lightning, and debris. Rathakor roared, his voice echoing across the dunes. "Humans, you are nothing but prey." Elias met his gaze steadily. Prey fight to survive, but predators decide who lives. They clashed again, strength against skill, power against intelligence. Rathakor struck with every ounce of his might. But Elias used the terrain and the storm, ducking under blows, sidestepping attacks, and countering when Rathakor was off balance. Finally, Elias saw the opening. Using Rathakor's own momentum against him, he struck a precise blow with a spear he had crafted from stormsteel shards. Rathakor fell to the sand, defeated, breathing heavily. For the first time, a Draken chief had been overcome by a human. The remaining Draken warriors, seeing their leader fall, began to retreat. Their morale shattered. They fled toward their ships, leaving the humans in control of the battlefield. Victory and unity. The desert fell silent, save for the wind. Humans moved carefully, tending to the wounded and checking the battlefield. The Draken losses were great and their forces were scattered across the dunes. Elias raised his voice, calling his people together. "Today we have proven that humans endure. Today we have shown that courage, intelligence, and unity are stronger than brute force. Tarn-9 is no longer theirs alone. It is ours because we are willing to fight for it." Mara stood beside him, smiling despite the exhaustion. "We did it," she said softly. Elias nodded. "This is only the beginning. The Draken may regroup, but we have changed the rules. From now on, humans are not prey. We are masters of the storm." Across the desert, small groups of humans emerged from hiding. Inspired by the victories, they joined the larger force, swelling the ranks of the resistance. For the first time, the humans of Tarn-9 were united. A single unstoppable force. A legend carried by the wind, the broken spear, once a symbol of Draken strength, now lay planted in the sand atop a ridge. It pointed toward the horizon, a silent message to any who might come after them. Humans endure. Humans adapt. Humans prevail. Elias stood beside it, looking out over the desert. The storm had passed, leaving behind a quiet that felt like the calm after a great battle. Yet the humans could feel it. The wind carried their story across the dunes, across Tarn, across the stars. They will remember this day, Elias whispered, not as a defeat for the Draken, but as the day humans became the storm. Mara placed a hand on his shoulder. And tomorrow? She asked. Tomorrow, Elias said. We continue. We grow. We build. We prepare for whatever comes next. Tarn is ours, not because it is easy, but because we are brave enough to claim it. The humans cheered quietly, raising their voices to the sky. They had faced impossible odds, fought a powerful enemy, and emerged victorious. But more importantly, they had discovered their own strength. The strength to endure, to adapt, and to become legends. As night fell over Tarn, the stars shone brightly above the desert. The wind whispered across the dunes, carrying with it the echoes of human courage, determination, and hope. The Draken may return one day, but the humans would be ready. They had become one with the storms, masters of the desert, and a force that no one could ignore. Elias looked to the horizon one last time before the night fully settled. Let the wind carry our name, he said. Let Tarn remember that humanity does not bow, does not break, and never forgets. We endure, we thrive, and we are unstoppable. The desert listened, and the wind carried the words across the dunes. Humanity's legend had begun,